All right, so it's Sunday afternoon in Thailand, a little after 4 o'clock, and this is the time for Sunday morning in the UK and in Europe. And today we're going to talk on the topic of ordaining and becoming a monk versus a layperson. And let us start it off with the easy answer to that is that if you can become a monk, then do so. And if you can't, find out a way of living your life so that you can live it as if you were a monk. And that includes spending as much time around monks as you can. So there are many advantages to being around the monks. One is that you're much more likely to have noble friends with the monks. You're not going to find noble friendship generally at the local pub. It's just not going to be there. You're not going to find noble friends at work. In fact, you're more likely to find noble friends at the pub than you are at work. So, what then is the advantage of being a monk and being around nobles? Well, one of them is that the monks actually practice the Dhamma together. They're thinking about the Dhamma. They talk about the Dhamma. And if you're in the vicinity of monks talking about the Dhamma, you're going to hear the Dhamma. You're going to be listening to it. And if you're off on your own as a layman, not around the monks at all, more than likely you'll be listening to Fox News or MSNBC or something else that's not going to be of any value to you in your spiritual journey. So, in fact, that's probably a pretty good analogy that if you are going to go on a journey, it's better to do it as a group. But each one of you has to do their own. This is, in fact, one of the things that you can talk about in the sense of the big boat versus the little boat, the Mahayana versus the Hinayana, except that we're kind of turning it upside down and looking at it as the difference between you and a backpack crossing a wilderness versus versus doing it in a wagon train where you have a wagon master and you have scouts and all of that kind of stuff. So the big boat in this case would be then that everybody's got to make the journey on their own. It's just better to do it around other people. Those who are also on the journey, they commiserate with you. If you're off on a journey by yourself, then the people that you meet along the way are not going to be familiar with what you're doing. And in fact, in some cases, they won't like what you're doing because they're not doing it. And people like to be around people who have similar thoughts, etc., like that. And so you can, in fact, practice the Noble Dhamma as, let us say, having not ordained. Right now, I'm reluctant to use the word layperson because that's the word that has been stolen from Catholicism. That in the suttas, they use the word householder. Now, what a householder is someone who holds property. And often during the time of the Buddha, property owners had servants. They had employees. They had a big ranch. They had a spread. And so the guy who owns the house, he's got an obligation to other people that if he quits the householding, abandons his house, he may destroy the livelihood of 20, 30, or 40 people. And so there, in the time of the Buddha then, mostly because of the way that the sutras were laid out and because they were continued on and carried on by the monks, you would assume that the Buddha was all bhikkhu Sangha and had nothing to say or nothing for um, the householders or the lay followers, and that's certainly not true. That in fact most of the people who followed the Buddha closely, practiced what he taught, did not ordain. The ratio would be more lay people than monks. However, the way to do it would be to have those lay people, or if you're thinking about it, be sure to communicate with others on the path. Christianity has known this, by the way, for centuries. That's what the whole quality or the concept of a church is. A church is not a church building. A church is a collection of people coming together with the same mindset. All right? Another one would be studying anything like science or philosophy or whatever. Scientists are doing things on their own, generally are slow. But if they are working together with a team, the team can make more effort. This concept then comes, have you ever heard of general systems theory? General systems theory has the quality that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So that if you've got one guy, he's off doing his things. If you have 5 guys working together, the product will be greater than what 5 individuals can do. You see that in house building. You see that in police. If the city of New York had 1 policeman, he would be pretty well overwhelmed. No, it takes a whole, what they call a force. I wish they wouldn't call it a police force. Maybe they could call it a police happiness brigade. But in any case, there's this whole quality of community. That in fact, this is what we mean by community, commune, being social. That in fact, humans are social animals. In fact, all of the mammals are community oriented, with the exception of a few. If you go back and look at living creatures like reptiles, turtles, crocodiles, and snakes, you can see that the turtles will come up on shore, lay their eggs, go back into the ocean, and let each egg fend for itself. But because humans and other animals give live birth, we have also developed that as an instinctual level, so that we have motherly instincts, we have community instincts, we have tribal instincts, we have herding instincts and nesting instincts. These instincts, by the way, of the name that I'm using, is all the same instinct. The instinct of collecting together. And yet most of the people, especially in the West, most of the people who are practicing the Dhamma are doing it all on their own, with maybe once a year or so doing a retreat. And when we go to the retreat, they're in noble silence and they're still not in community. And so the system that has been developed in the West doesn't really fulfill its duty correctly. I think, in fact, that the Mahayana and the Zen groups that have come to the West do a better job of that than the Theravada, because the Theravada are overly emphasizing one solitude practice of meditation. And that the only time that they're in a group is to listen to a teacher talk rather than communicating with each other. And when they're only listening to the teacher talk, they're not hearing the Dhamma very often, because very few teachers want to keep talking and keep talking all day long every day. But in fact, all of the Western teachers who do retreats, meditation retreat teachers, all suffer burnout. They get tired of doing the same retreats over and over again, especially to a new audience. It's like nobody ever goes anywhere, and the teacher is stuck in rudimentary stuff and not able to give any higher Dhamma or give individual advice. But if you're in a community of friends, and that's what I would recommend for each one of you here, is to stay in community with the friends that we have on the Noble Dhamma here, because you haven't come to ordain. Now, back to the householder, there is a sutta where the Buddha talks about the 5 aspects of a householder, and that one of them actually is quite a long passage about the duties of a man to his wife, that we take care of her, we give her gifts. But the most important gift that we give to the wife is power. Let her make all the decisions. You go along, rather than in the West, the men want to run the show. They want to be the politician. They want to be in charge. They want to run that house that they hold. But the Buddha would highly recommend the householder to spend much of his time at the wat, or sitting on his porch, minding his own business, and let the house run by itself with the wife in charge. So, if we look at it from that position, we can see that there are a few things that householders can do that make their life much more as if they were around monks, ordained. If you're ordained, you're actually going to be around monks. Now, one of the qualities that you can do also is not just be around them, but make sure that you're around them quite a lot and often at the right time. The example of that would be to go out Pendabat with the monks, to go out gathering the food in the monk's pot, because that's a time to practice. What are we practicing? One of the ways of saying it is to practice guarding the sense doors. That the monks, when they're out on Pendabat, and as they're trained in Pendabat, they tend to start living their lives that way, and that is, watch your eye door. Don't lollygag. Don't look at the signs in the stores and the girls or whatever is out on the street, but rather you keep your eyes focused about 2-3 meters ahead, so that you can see what the ground is, so that you know how to walk barefoot. You can avoid things, avoid mud puddles, and people who are more interested in looking at where, let us say, being entertained by the features around them as they're traveling, they're not really paying attention to the actual traveling. This is exactly what happens out on the highways in well, not just in America or the West, but all over, is when people are driving their cars, they're not really paying attention to the road. But in fact, they're one of the qualities of roads, especially around towns, is that they're full of all kinds of distractions. They're full of signs, and buy this, and gas 10 miles ahead, and road signs put up by the government and all of that kind of stuff. And so while people are paying attention to all the stuff as they're traveling, they wind up having a lot of accidents because they're not paying attention to where they're going. So if we're going to be guarding our sense doors, what that actually means is to start to pay attention to where you're going. This would be true especially if you're out walking, if you're on bendabat, if you're going for food or whatever like that. Pay attention to the ground that you're walking on. Don't step on things. So we can also take that in general as you live your life in the Wat. In fact, that's the whole quality of a Wat, is after you've seen how beautiful this Wat is, you don't pay attention to it much anymore. There's nothing to see here. The lay people like to put up a big fancy boat, a temple-like property that's got red roofs and gold trim and that kind of stuff. But most of the back of every Wat is pretty run down, not much to look at. And so this is the way of then avoiding things to look at, is by staying in the Wat. If you're in the Wat, there's just not much to look at. Nothing is really entertaining or trying to get your attention. And so you can just be at the Wat and guard your sense doors. But if you've got your cell phone out, the whole point of the cell phone is to give you something to do that has nothing to do with guarding your sense doors. I think there's a few applications of meditation or whatever like that, but they still want to give you something to look at rather than looking at what's going on around us in our immediate vicinity. So listening to the sounds of the air, listening to the wind, listening to what's around us would be all there would be, and that we would want to guard the sense doors so that we're not paying attention to anything that would be distracting from us being in the present moment. That would be especially true about billboards and advertisements. And so when monks are out on bendabat, they don't look at the billboards. They don't look at that. In fact, most of the monks who were on bendabat have nothing else to look at but the feet of the monk in front of them. It's only the most senior monk who has to guide the parade. And if they're a real Zen master, they may guide that troop of monks right through rocky patches, muddy fields, and other places to make sure that everybody on that bendabat is paying close attention to where he's walking. Gravel roads, in fact, especially those that's got great big pieces of gravel, is interesting because no matter where you put your foot, it's going to hurt. And so you don't want to stay on gravel. You want to get off of the gravel as soon as you can. And the head monk may, in fact, guide you right through the gravel so that you can look at that. That's what's worth paying attention to, is how do your feet feel? So if we could find a way of living our life like that as a layman, we can make the same kind of progress that a monk would make if a monk is practicing correctly. Or if we don't and stay away, then we don't even think about the Dhamma very much. That some of you, in fact, will come and be on the call once a week. At least you're thinking about the Dhamma once a week. If we didn't have these calls, it may be months between times of remembering. And so this is why we want to do these calls on a frequent basis, is to give everybody a chance to practice at least a little bit often. So that's the whole quality. In fact, there's not much difference between being a monk and being a layman if the layman is practicing like being a monk. And the monks, often, especially young monks, are not practicing like monks. They ordained for other reasons. In Thailand, there's a tradition that the mother rides to heaven on the robe tails of her son. Now that's true on his ordination day. Every mother who has a son that's being ordained, she's in heaven. She's the star of the show that day. The question is, does it last? And the answer to that has to do with whether she forced or coerced her son into being a monk, or whether that was his idea. If it's his idea that he wants to be a monk, then he's going to get a whole lot more out of being a monk than if he came and became a monk because his family wanted him to do it. Now, Westerners have exactly the opposite issue going on. Often their family don't want you to go be a monk. What a terrible thing to do. Wow, you leave your mom and you go off someplace and she gets no benefit from it. So there's an extra issue like that. There may come a time when the West has enough Watts and enough Buddhists that are going to the temples that tradition may get started in the West, so that, like the Thais, they have other reasons to become a monk. But in fact, I have seen that in the United States. One of my best friends when I was at Wat Greensboro and then later at Wat High Point was a young Laotian man who became a monk under family pressure. That the family's pressure is that they had an uncle. He was at the age of 65 and retired, and so he wanted to be a monk just like his other brother. And so now we have two brothers and a nephew of each one of them. And that nephew actually began not just to go along to get along, to make sure that he was around his uncle, to make sure everything was okay, but he actually became really interested in the Dhamma. So that's a situation that you find in Asia, that people will ordain for other reasons, mostly just family pressure. And so they may not make the best monks right away because they're not where they want to be, they're where they were told to be. But for the Westerners, anybody who wants to become a monk, we've got some hurdles to go through. The first one is to find a place that's suitable. And generally, the way that I would say it is that if it is a Thai Wat that, let us say, has the patron saint of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, that's a really good place to start. And I know several of them in the United States. There's one in Seattle at what Atam Mayatarama with Achan Reet. Wat Thai, Washington, D.C. There's a Wat in Chicago, and there's one in Dallas. And so this would be a good place to go to start. If you're in England, I would recommend that you go to one of the Ajahn Chah places, like Amravati or Chichurst or some place like that. But the real way to do it is for folks to come to Thailand, because here we have a great variety of Wats that are worth going to. And then, in fact, that's what both Cathal and Daniel have done, is after they ordained, they're still looking for the right place. And so they've actually gotten quite a lot of education about the various Wats that are available. And so this is what I would recommend, is if you're thinking about it. All right, so what criteria would you suggest? Well, one of the ways that I would suggest it is that if you have young children, now the Buddha, when he left, He was in a very, let us say, aristocratic royal family, and his wife was well taken care of both by Siddhartha Gautama's family and also her own family. That in fact she moved back with her family. But in the West, generally, the mentality is that the father is responsible for the care and the upkeep of his children up until a certain age. And I would suggest that because of social norms and other reasons, that if a guy wants to ordain as a monk in Thailand, that he would do that after his kids are old enough, or like in Thailand, in some cases, monks will ordain temporarily. Let us say at the age of 40, go stay at the Wat, let the wife handle the family business, even while he's got teenage kids there, and then come back later to the lay life and let the kids be taken care of. But that would happen only in the sense that the man would go to the local Wat and would be able to see his kids every day. That in fact, most likely, his kids are going to be out there in Bendabat. There's also the other situation, which is exactly opposite that I saw mostly in Cambodia, because the school system there is not as advanced as it was in Thailand. But 100 years ago, most of the boys in the family would ordain so that they could get an education from the monks, and that the monks then would take the samanin, the student monks, the children, the boys. He would take them to their local family's neighborhood to do the bendabat. All of that kind of cultural stuff that I'm talking about now does not exist in the West. If you come to Thailand to ordain, you're kind of abandoning your family in a way, and that might cause some heartaches. Now, to be quite honest with you, wives are a whole lot easier to convince that it's okay for the husband to go be a monk than it is to convince the kids that daddy's abandoning you. And so I would suggest then that if you do have kids that are children, to think about postponing becoming a monk and in fact stay in a society or stay in a place where you have the ability to visit the Wat often, to make friends with the monks, to spend your off time there rather than going to shows and going to plays and going to sports events and going to the bar, etc., like that, that I would suggest that you go and spend your time at the Wat. Basically, not doing much of anything. There's no activities there. So this is the way that I would suggest that we go. See, there's one right now. This, Dean, what you're holding is the best reason for you to practice as a layman. Now you might come for a month or two or three, but I'm talking about years and years. That baby does not want to see you gone to Thailand and not see you for 10 or 12 years. But in fact, that's also one of the possibilities. That after I stayed a monk in Thailand for a few years, I went and stayed at one of the Wats in the United States. And to now, I hear there are more than 500 Wats in the United States, either supported by Thai, Lao, Cambodian, or Vietnamese. And there's also a few Sri Lankan and a few Burmese, but most of the Wats are Thai or have Thai monks. And the reason that the Thais will be here is because Thailand has a better arrangement with the U.S. government for getting visas. So even Cambodian and Laotian Wats with Cambodian and Laotian people Well, more than likely, half the monks there will be Thai monks. So, I would highly recommend that if you are in a position that all you've got is a girlfriend and a job, and you don't have a house, you're not a householder, then the possibly better thing for you to do with your life is, hop on your tuk-tuk and go to the Wat and stay there. But if you've got young children, if you own property, if you've got employees, if you're running a business, then I would suggest that you postpone being a monk and go off and live, let us say, visiting the Wat every day. Go to the Wat every day if you've got one close by. And if you don't, go find one anyway. There'll be one close enough by. Okay, so Karwan, you got your hand up.
Well, Dhammarato, I have a question, but I don't know. The thing is this: what is, sometimes I'm very interested in this topic, but to be honest, sometimes I don't know why. What is Buddha's teaching? What is this method? Is it all about just being happy, or is it more than that? Because I don't see what. Let's say I go to a monastery.
Wait a minute. I'm completely confused. If you're practicing correctly and getting good results, and you are in fact satisfied, what more do you want? If you're satisfied, happy, safe, secure, comfortable, got no problems, what else do you want in life? Do you want something magical like enlightenment? So let me tell you about it like this, okay? I hear on the mostly on the web, there have been in fact conversations about guys who claimed enlightenment. They're all around, okay? Now, here's a question for you. Would you personally rather be actually satisfied, or would you rather go around claiming that you're enlightened?
Well, the thing is, I don't know what that enlightenment is. I have heard that now for at least 20 years since I was very young. But basically I'm doing something which I don't know what the goal is. I'm trying to achieve something which I don't even know what the end goal is. Is the end goal just being satisfied and happy? Is that the end goal?
All right, let me throw that back to you. What else could you possibly want?
Well, I don't know. I think it will be something magical, probably. Yeah.
Right. You would want something magical, or you're probably not going to get it. And so by wanting something magical, you're going to be disappointed, dissatisfied. So what happens when you have a life that's completely satisfying?
Well, if it also yeah, that would be nice, of course. But
okay, begin to think about that, because in fact that is a kind of enlightenment. Now, let me give you an actual definition of enlightenment so that we can get some guidance, because most people, they hear the word enlightenment and they immediately dream up something magical. And that's mostly true because whatever society that we've been living in a society that has magical thinking. We've got a magical guru, we've got magical imams, we've got magical Mohammeds, we've got magical Jesus, we've got all of these guys way up in the air, people who ride horses up to the ninth heaven, okay, all of that kind of stuff. And so we have magical beliefs built in. Not only that, built into the society, but every child, when we are born and start to play with our toys, we always think of our toys as magical. So if the little boy has little toy soldiers, or maybe he's got little toy football players. These were toys that were common in the 1950s, with little toy howitzers. When the little boy plays with those things, he dreams that it's a real howitzer. that it's a real soldier that he's moving down the field, or even if it's a little truck that he's holding in his hand and he goes zoom, 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 he's pretending in a magical way that that truck is real. One of the things that I have seen is that the little boy had a Tonka truck, big Tonka truck like that, and he took it to a construction site and was overjoyed when the guy that was actually operating a backhoe took that backhoe, that huge shovel, and very carefully poured enough dirt into that dump truck to fill it up. And that little boy was overjoyed because he was thinking that it was a real truck and this real guy was doing it with a real backhoe. But it was just a toy truck. That was all it really was. And so the way that I'm talking about it now, every one of you grew up in a magical childhood with questions like, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? What are you going to do when you grow up? All of these are magical questions. We don't ever teach the children, do you like what you're eating now? Do you like the colors that you see now? Can you enjoy your life right now? We don't ever teach our children that. It's always in a magical world that we teach our children. And so you've grown up in a magical world. And when you hear about Buddhism, guess what? It becomes magical. It gets downright magical. So what can we do about that? Well, the first thing is that let's get some definitions. Let's define a couple of words. The first word we'll define is enlightenment. That gives you a real definition of the word. Now, this word enlightenment that I'm using comes from several suttas. It comes from Sutta number 2, Sutta number 117, and the Anapanasati Sutta number 118, and other places like that. The Buddha talks about it in, I'll say, let's use the example of 117, the sutta that talks about the Eightfold Noble Path. Now, the name of that sutta in English is the Great 40. Guess what? 8 on an Eightfold Path does not divide into 40. Why is that? Why did he call it the Great 40? The answer to that is he added 2 additional items to the tail end of the Eightfold Noble Path. And what were those? Knowledge and deliverance. Okay, knowledge and deliverance. Now, these are not magical words. That in fact, the knowledge is that you're looking at what's going on, and when you keep looking, you'll begin to get knowledge about what you're looking at. This is the Eightfold Noble Path, starting with right noble view, to look and to look and to look, and then you will gain knowledge. Also in Sutta number 2, it talks about that the first 3 fetters of personality view, Silabhata Paramasa, which is attachments to the way that things should be, and also doubt about what is the path and what is not the path. These 3 things are then part and parcel of what you would call knowledge. In other words, now you know how to practice. Now you know how to practice. You've got it wired. It's deep inside. So basically what that means is that you know how to look to see what you're carrying that's heavy so that you can set it down. All right, so now let's look at the word enlightenment. The word enlightenment has 2 qualities of the word light. Okay, one is the word light is like shining a light on it, daylight, which has the quality of looking and seeing, as opposed to fumbling around in the dark. So almost all of humanity is fumbling around in the dark, but an enlightened person is one who looks. This is in fact what the word bodhi or achan po, the word bodhi, what does it mean? It means awake. It means looking. It means being able to see. All right. So once you start to see, you begin to see a bunch of rubbish. You begin to see a bunch of heavy things. And so the second kind of enlightenment would be not heavy. Lighten up. Become lightweight. Don't carry a bunch of garbage around. So these are the two qualities of enlightenment is everything is light because you can see with your own light. So, does anybody have any questions now about enlightenment? Good. Every one of you are enlightened right now. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Everybody's here is enlightened. There's no special deal except that it's rare. It's not
But there is
it's not a
something there,
usual
Dhammarato.
thing. Go ahead, Ben.
No, that was me, Dean. We understand what you're
Go
saying.
ahead.
We understand what you're saying, but the important thing is there definitely is something there. We're not what Karen is trying to say. That what I think Karen is what he's trying to say is there something there? Enlightenment. There is. It is something. It is pointing to something.
Right. But if you think about it more as a word that is a verb rather than a noun, I think that that's what we've been doing in the West is we objectify these verbs, turning them into nouns. So enlightenment is not a noun or a label that you put on yourself, like he is enlightened, he is an arahat, etc. But enlightenment is something that you're doing right now. You're looking and you're setting down your burdens. That's what enlightenment is. It's an action verb. That's the way to look at it. Okay, go ahead, Kawai.
Okay, so actually, so basically, I won't say I will use the word egocentric, but I don't mean that in a bad way. But so basically, the thing what we are doing is just being egocentrically happy.
No. Basically, one of the burdens that you're carrying around is the boundary of the ego. Egocentric means that you put a center in it, and that's heavy and hard to carry around. When you really look, you'll see that there is no center. That in fact, the ego itself is dangerous. Okay? The reality is that you think that you are you. That is a myth. That is a delusion. That is part of the lies that you've been told because you've been told that by everybody who sees their own existence as egocentric. So it'd be different. The two difference would be, I would say, selfishness, the egocentric, versus boundarynessless. When we take down these boundaries, okay, you've heard talks about unification or duality versus unity, okay? Egocentric is a duality. It's me versus the world. And what we do is set down that burden, that boundary, so that the ego is much more fluid. In fact, it's so fluid that it kind of flies off. There's nothing there to it.
Dhammarato, but sorry, one more question. But why? Basically, main thing is why respect monks? Let's say, especially in Thailand, monks are they have very high status. But if they don't offer anything besides being happy for themselves, so what is basically why?
Actually, starting from the old days, but also currently, the monks are the psychologist for the community. That people go there and respect the monks because the monks got good advice. Okay, they're worthy of respect. They're worthy of honor. They're worthy of gifts because they cut through the cord of egocentric. So they're very worthy of the gifts of food and the basic utensils of life. So don't think of it in the sense of, oh, it's a religion and the people have to pay that respect to the monks, but rather that the monks are actually worthy of that kind of respect. If you're around worthy people, then in fact it happens often. It's happened dozens of times, and it just happened this week that someone comes to the house here treating me as if I am worthy of a visit. Now, that's in his mind and not in mine. So I'm not thinking of it from an egocentric place. It's just another guest that comes. But when they come here, they bring gifts. In fact, one of the gifts that I got recently was the biggest bagel I ever saw. Is that right, Mikey?
I think you mean croissants. But yes,
A croissant, okay, the biggest croissant. All right. So, someone thought that I was worthy of gifts. And why is that? It's because I teach something that's valuable, wholesome, freedom giving, enlightening. That when you give people the ability to feel enlightened, they see that as very valuable, worthy. And so they give that respect. That in fact, Mikey, I'll call on you again because don't you think around here in southern Thailand that even though Bhikkhu Buddhadasa has been dead for 30 years, he's still held in high esteem?
Yes, certainly. I've seen you'll go to a Wat and there'll be times where his picture is the highest picture on the wall.
Mm-hmm. So look at it like this, that when people are worthy of respect, now in our normal society, especially in the old days, a doctor was held in high esteem, high respect. Now, not so much, because most of them are not just in the business of healing people, they're also in the business of Mercedes and mansions. They want the grub. In fact, the doctors in the United States have a union together to keep young people from ever becoming a doctor, because if you flood the market with good doctors, the old doctors are not going to be so rich anymore. So you want to keep the doctors at a minimum. That way the people will falsely highly revere these money grubbers. But not all doctors are money grubbers. Let us say that every doctor is a money grubber a little bit. It's a mixed bag. That in the morning he'll see a patient and he's thinking only about her welfare, and in the afternoon he sees another old rich bitch and his only thought is, how much can I make off of her? And so every doctor is doing it like that. But in the old days, medical doctors were highly respected. The same thing would be true about college professors, but most college professors don't have the high regard and respect now that they did then. But as you know, here in Thailand, the monks generally are held in high regard, high respect. Also, they're held in high regard and high respect simply because they have a high moral existence. They're top quality people. You've got good human beings there, and they're in the practice of being good, high quality human beings, worthy of respect. In fact, the Buddhist monks, even my mom, who was raised a Christian, was so Christian that she would often have the key to the door of the church. She was the accountant at some churches and other things like that. She was always deeply buried into the church. But when I was in the United States at one time, she would come and visit at the Wat, and she could see that the monks at Wat Greensboro and other places, Wat High Point, etc., that she would go to visit, the monks were more worthy of respect than her average Christian preacher that she'd seen over the years. And she told me this. This is something that she directly told me, is that the Christian preachers do not live up to the standards that your average Joe Blow monk lives up to, the ones that are not always there together, but at least their morality, their sila, is top notch. And that's worthy of respect. So the monks are worthy of respect, and the reason for that is that their eyes are open, they can see what's going on, and they can begin to drop the defilements, even dropping the defilement of egocentric. Because people who are egocentric, guess what? They're not happy. They're not happy. They're pretending. And that's what you'll find in Western Buddhism a lot. You'll find a lot of pretenders. So, if someone actually has dropped the burden, then the boundaries also are very loose. There's not much to it anymore. He sees himself as a friend rather than a guru or someone high up on a pedestal. Even though the lay people keep trying to put him up on that pedestal, he doesn't quite fit and he slides back down, and they respect him even more for that. It's because he does not want to be up on that egocentric high pedestal looking down on other people. He's dropped that. So here we mean then by enlightenment is not making somebody egocentric, but one who has dropped even that burden. And so he's become at one with the community, at one with the other monks. He's become at one with the environment that he is in. He's not looking for things for his advantage. Does that answer your question, Karwan?
Partially, yes, partially. Not completely. I'm not completely out of peace, but.
No, you're not completely satisfied yet. I
No.
understand that. Never mind. We'll continue on.
We'll continue on. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So the next word that I would like to discuss with you so that you can get some understanding of it is the word nibbana, because the word nibbana is put way up there high. But the way of looking at it, in fact, the original word for nibbana, the Buddha had two different views of it. One was a domesticated animal, but the dogs don't bark anymore because they're cool. All right? And the second one, like the bull, you have some cows that are domesticated and you can walk right up to them and pet them and everything is cool. And then you go into the pasture where the raging bull is and you'll see that that bull is not yet cool. Pretty hot, in fact. Hot and heavy. So the next example of nibbana would be cooking food in an oven, and when you take it out of the oven, it's still too hot to eat. And so you let it nibbana, you let it cool. So the example that I'm going to give that helps people understand it would be like somebody that's been on a road journey in their car, and when they come home and they finally arrive at home, just at the moment that the car is at home, when it arrives home, it's still as hot as it was when it was out on the journey. Is that not true? The brakes are hot. The radiator is hot. The tires are hot. Maybe even the driver is hot. Everything about that car is hot when it's out on the road. But once you turn the key off and come inside, what does that car do all by itself? Without any help at all, it cools off. Okay? So, if you can stop your own rat race, if you can stop your journey, then you will naturally cool off. And why do we stop the journey? We stop the journey because we're not out chasing something or out being chased by something. And when people are on a journey, they're always either chasing something or being chased by something. But when you're neither being chased by something nor chasing after something, then you can just sit down and rest. And when you do, you begin to cool off. Then would you say that that's true? And when you stop chasing, you cool off.
I agree.
All right. So let's look at Nibbana in a real way, not a magical way. Let's look at it in the sense that when you're enlightened, that means that you're dropping your burdens. You're not out there chasing after them anymore, nor are those burdens chasing after you. And so when you're not chasing after stuff and being chased by things, we can just sit down and relax. And when we sit down and relax, in fact, part of the relaxation process is cooling off. Wow, what a relief it is. I don't have to chase things anymore. Nothing to chase, no place to go, nothing to do. So we can begin to practice that right from the beginning. Then, in fact, you can hear people say that when I talk about it, the meditation is to take those unwholesome thoughts out of the mind and sit down and start having thoughts like, oh, wow, right now there's no place to go and nothing to do, and nobody believes that because they're still chasing inside, still being chased. But if you keep practicing, oh, there's no place to go and there's nothing to do and everything is fine and I can be happy right now, then guess what? Eventually, it seeps in. Eventually, we begin to feel like that there is no place to go and there's nothing to do, and I can sit down and relax and go into a state of Nibbana because I've dropped the burden. I'm enlightened. I'm lightened up. And yet so many of your arahants in the West who are laymen who have never been ordained, who have never lived at a Wat much, they go around claiming that they're this and that, and now they have to defend themselves because people are going to attack them. So maybe it's better not to claim anything. Maybe it's better just to be happy, to be satisfied. Everything is good. Everything is okay. What more enlightenment could you want other than having a completely satisfied moment, moment by moment after moment after moment, day in, day out, it just everything is okay. Why should one who is like that want some magical kind of enlightenment? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I say one more thing? Now I'm thinking all of a sudden in the culture in which I was born, as a man, if you smile a lot, that means you are not manly. When you look at men, if they smile, basically men don't smile that much. Because
that's because you're supposed to be unhappy.
Yeah.
You're supposed to do your duty.
Yeah.
You're supposed to surrender.
Yeah.
That's what the word Islam means. It means to surrender, including surrender your happiness. But there's another way of looking at it, and that is instead of you surrender, egocentric and all, why don't we just surrender the defilements? Just set them down. Be happy and joyful and stop worrying about what the culture says. In fact, that buck up, stiff upper lip is not just in the Muslim culture. It's all over the place. You're not supposed to be happy. If you're happy, that means you're not working hard enough.
Basically, if I go there, be happy, people will say I'm gay or I'm something like that, because gay people...
Yeah, you're different than they are. They don't like you because you're okay. So those are the people that I'm trying to say, don't associate with them because you become like them because you're behaving the way they want you to behave. Go behave around monks who are happy, who are joyful, who have nothing to lose. Islamic men have a whole lot to lose.
Yeah, I also say I don't think it is specifically because of Islam. I think probably that was also before Islam in that region. It is even so worse, bro. In the war, when they get wounded, they are not even allowed to cry. Even if a bullet hit them, and if they cry because of getting hit by bullets, even that mean, oh, you're not manly enough because now you are showing your emotions and you're crying. And so I've really seen men with a bullet in his body, and he was just trying not to cry and be tough man. And
Guess what? He wasn't happy, was he?
no, of course.
No. Was he satisfied with his existence? Oh, I've got a bomb and blown my shoulder off. Is that okay? Yeah, I can handle that. None of them have that attitude. They have the attitude of, in America, they have the phrase grin and bear it.
Yeah,
And
like that.
Islam has the attitude of you don't grin, you just bear it. You have in England, they have that quality of stiff upper lip. You don't show emotion.
Yep.
That's why English humor is so dry. You're not supposed to laugh at your own jokes. And yet, the whole quality is the quality of in Buddha, of enlightenment, is to lighten up. And it doesn't fit in with the society. It doesn't fit in with Christian society. It doesn't fit in with Islamic society. It doesn't fit in with British society. How about Russia? Do you think it fits into Russian society? All right. But does it fit into the society that you find at a Buddhist what? A Buddhist temple? Yeah. So that's what I would suggest for the lay people, to start spending more time at the what? Go around people who are smiling. Maybe it's contagious. You could start to smile too. Oh, wow, what a relief it is. Anybody got any final questions about this? Ben, what do you think?
It's all very good, Dhammarato. Why stress about anything? You don't need to. You can just
Yeah, drop
relax.
your stress. Exactly.
Yeah.
Set it
But
down.
then
Set the burdens
I would
down.
ask.
How
I
about
would-
you, Ivan?
I have a
Dhammarato.
I have a question about sense restraint. I really like what the monk was doing when they're going Vendaba, all this thing. My question is, as a householder or whatever, layperson, what was, like sightseeing, people, and I don't know, I like to do that, like sightseeing when I go to new places. Like, is that dangerous? Is that a trap?
In fact, many places in Thailand, many Wats in Thailand are in fact tourist attractions. They go. That in fact in some Wats they even have it that they've got not only just dress codes, but they also have signs about this area is for monks only, it's restricted, don't go in there. But basically, yeah, a lot of lay people go to the Wat to pick up the vibe, and the vibe at a Wat is different than the vibe of Disneyland. Disneyland is all about hurry, 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 get my food, get my drink, get my ride, get my money, get everything. You go, 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 go. And people, when they come out of the Disneyland, they're tired. Westerners do that on vacation. They spend a lot of money on a fancy vacation. They go to the beach, and what do? They go work out. They go to yoga classes. They go do this. They go traveling. They go around, and at the end of the vacation, they're more tired than they were when they started the vacation. They need to go back to work to relax. All
Yeah,
right. So,
that makes sense.
Watch for some people then is going to be a tourist attraction. But after you've toured the attraction, what happens next? Do you sit down and enjoy it and stay at the Wat? Or do you go home or go looking for something else, some other attraction? Let's go to the next Wat and go see what they've got. Can you, in fact, stop your lollygagging? Stop your tourism? Stop your sightseeing and start seeing the real sights in the mind. Start having great knowledge about how you make yourself unhappy and dissatisfied so that you can drop that stuff. That's the word enlightenment. The two versions of it is one, look at what you're doing, and number two, stop doing it.
Yeah, the feeling tired at the end of that makes so much sense. It basically answers my question. Because sometimes it does feel unwholesome, like it leads to tiredness. Yeah, understood.
Okay, Dietrich, what do you have to say? It looks like you've been practicing like your hair's on fire.
It's not. Maybe my mind is on fire. You never know.
Ah,
No, what I was wanted to say about the Disney thing is that when you drive through America, they have these signs up and saying, go to Disney and have the time of your life.
uh-huh,
And that always makes me wonder, what about the rest of the time of my life?
uh-huh. Well,
So,
if you spend that time at Disneyland spending your money there, they'll like that too.
yeah, but what I mean to say is it's just only like a painkiller. It's like a paracetamol.
Mhm.
I want to get away from my daily life. I go to a amusement park, and then I go back to my daily life.
Mhm.
But
Can
maybe
you go back to your daily life in a new way?
and enjoy that and be happy.
Enjoy what you're doing. Slow down. You move too fast. You got to make the moment last now. Skipping down the cobblestones, looking for love and feeling groovy. Well, not
Yeah,
looking for anything at all and feeling groovy, actually.
yeah. You got a nice voice, Dhammarato,
Well, it was trained.
by the singing the mantras.
No, I was trained as a musician. I had years and years of voice lessons. I was in various choirs.
Wow. How about that?
So, Ben, you got your hand up.
A question, Dhammarato, would be, if you're satisfied with existence presently, why go to a what?
Well, that's a good point. That in fact, if you are satisfied with your existence, then why are you even on this call? Why don't you just sit there? Oh, I don't need Dhammarato. I'm too happy. You're not. That's the whole point. Is that you're not satisfied with existence. That's why you want to go to the Wat, is so that you can get that sort of satisfaction. It's available to you, but you got to practice, and you got to be around others to practice. Why?
But
Because you're in the habit of being dissatisfied. Those old habits come back so quick, so easy. You've got a brain that's wired with neurons to be unhappy. You've been trained to be unhappy.
but it's so easy to practice here that I think, why go? Like the thought enters the mind sometimes of go to Thailand, go to a what, maybe become a monk. But then I think that's a lot of effort
Mm-hmm.
when I can just sit here and be just as
Just sit here
happy.
and be happy. Yeah. If you can do that, that's what I would recommend. That would be the way. In fact, I even mentioned that the householder can just sit on his porch and be happy. Let the wife run the place. Just sit down and be happy. If you don't have a wife, you're even better off. Now you don't have anybody running the place. Maybe the place itself can settle down and be happy. Let your place nirvana rather than having a boss that's running it for you. But in any case, it's better for you to stop running, to stop chasing after stuff. And I agree that coming to Thailand to chase after nibbana is quite a lot of effort. It's not nibbana. But if you come to Thailand and sit down in front of an old monk who's not going anyplace and just sit there with him, his nirvana will rub off on you.
I do that every day. What with your videos, Dhammarato?
Okay, good for you. Right. Just sit there with the old fat man and just chill. That's the whole point of nirvana, is just to chill out. Stop chasing. That's available to every layman. You do not have to come to become a monk. But here's a question for you, and that is, once you have become chill, completely chill, then can't you fly an airplane? I mean, you don't have to flap your wings. You can just sit there and chill in the airplane, chill in the airport, chill in the taxi cab. It takes you right to the Wat, and then you can just chill in the Wat, because laymen don't really chill that much, that often. They still got to go shopping. They still got to go do what the wife tells them to do. They're still chasing. This is the quality of becoming a monk, is so that you don't even have to chase after the stuff that laymen would normally chase after, even while they're chill. But in fact, the best thing to say in that regard is that nowadays, the best thing to do is to get the exact complete benefit of the Dhamma and then decide to become a monk. Don't come and become a bad monk that's in training. Come already completely trained. Nobody says anything about that. I don't see any smiles.
I'd ask though, are there not always basic things that people have to do? Like, yeah, if you're a lay
No, there
person,
are not. You have been trained that there are basic things you have to do.
I know that technically there's not, but I mean, in terms of if you're a monk, your robe still needs washing sometimes. So
yeah, but you can have fun doing that. And guess what? A lot of monks go a long time without washing their robes.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
once a
I'm
month or
just
so.
saying, is that not the same thing as having a job to do as a layperson in terms of doing laundry? It's the same thing.
Yes,
then.
except for one thing. Within the context of the Western world, you're supposed to do laundry. And you don't do it because it's part of culture. It's part of what you have to do. If you become a monk, you don't have to do the laundry. You can wear the same robe over and over and over again. Someday you might want to wash it. And then you're having fun doing what you want to do, washing your robe. In fact, if you wash the robe too much, you wear it out washing it. The best thing to do is to not wash your clothes so often. You can get clothes to last 10 or 20 years if you don't wash them. But I don't wear a shirt often. I do that to save the shirts. The shirts don't need to be worn out by being on this body. And so when I do put on a shirt, because Tam tells me to put on a shirt to go to town, so I go to town, I take that shirt out of the closet, put it on, wire it to the bank, come back home, take that shirt off and put it back in the closet. That shirt probably has not ever been washed, and it's 10 years old. But it's only worn about once a month or so. All the stinky is already out of it because it's not been, constantly being stinkied up. So look at it that way, Ben, is that when you become a monk, then the rules don't work anymore. You don't have to wash your robes because you're supposed to wash the robes. It's a habit, in fact, of shaving once a month for Patty Mork, and yet you'll look at many photos of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and he's got a 3-month hair growth on him, The reason he doesn't have a nice fat beard is because he's Asian. He doesn't have much of a beard to grow. If you get close enough to him, you can see some stubble. He hadn't shaved in a long time. And sometimes some younger monk will chase him down and say, sit down, I'm going to shave your head. And Bhikkhu Buddhadasa says, okay. So this is the quality of being a monk, is that we take off all of those rites, rules, rituals, supposed tos. But if you're a layman, you're still subject to that. You got to work, you got to eat, you got to dress correctly. Clothes make the man. You got to dress according to what the society wants you to do. That's one of the reasons why I don't wear a shirt on these calls, is because people think I'm supposed to wear a shirt. And here in Thailand, I don't need to. In fact, I dress about the way that my landlord does. I see him only on occasion nowadays, but whenever I've seen him, all he's got on is a lungi. That's all he's got on. Haven't seen him with a shirt. That's typical old Thai tradition. But in the West, look at who? Who here has no shirt on? Shirt, 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 shirt. See a lot of shirts. Why do you wear a shirt? Do you do it for comfort? Do you do it for ease? Do you do it because it saves you from the gadflies or from the cold? Or do you do it because you're in the habit of wearing a shirt? A lot of Westerners come to this island here to become a hippie so that they can go barefoot. They can go braless. They can go without a shirt. They don't have to wear it because they're completely acceptable here. You go back to Europe, you got to get yourself tidied up. You're supposed to abide by the culture. So then the question is, can you drop your culture while you're still a layman? Can you do that? Ben, can you? Can you drop your culture? Drop all of those rites, rules, rituals, and ways you're supposed to dress and eat and go and whatnot like that. For instance, you're supposed to pay your electric bill, right?
Yep.
Monks don't pay electric bills.
I could not pay the electric bill. My landlord wouldn't be too happy, and I would take it as a responsibility that I've
So you've got a
for.
landlord too. You got to pay the landlord too, huh? Monks don't pay rent.
That's easy. That's easy. Working's easy. Getting money's easy. Paying them's easy.
Well, if you find that easy, continue doing that. Get chiller and chiller and chiller. You can live as a layman if you can chill. And that's why the Buddha Sangha is still available. That was what the Buddha started it for, was to make it easy. Being a layman is tough nookie.
I did find it that way before finding the Dhamma, and it just gets easier and easier.
Good for you. Congratulations. Hot dog. Look at that, folks. Ben's still wearing a shirt, but he's happy. All right. Does anybody else? Amit, you're back. Good to see you. You have any last things to say?
Good to see you as well. Thanks a lot, Dhammarato. It was very, very chilling call. I'm also taking it quite easy now. It's a beautiful Sunday here in Germany today.
All right. So, anybody else got anything to say? Anna, tell me about it. You're still muted.
everything is fine.
There you go. Now your mic is on. So, do you have something to say?
No, everything is just perfect right now.
All right. Terrific. Doesn't that word come from terrifying? Terror? Terrific? But if it's a cool terrific, then that's okay. So, Alexander, do you have something to say? How about you, Dean?
Yeah, I have something to say, but you mightn't like what I was going to say. It goes back to Carwan. Like, I would still ask that question, what Carwan asked, what are we doing here? What are we striving for? Except only
Yeah,
for
I would ask that same question myself. Why are you striving?
Yeah, but you look, I don't look. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I strongly believed that on one or two occasions I have experienced the jhanas, and only for I have experienced the jhanas, Dhammarato, I'd be still asking that question that Carwan asked, because that gives me faith in that what you are teaching us works.
The problem is that you're talking about it that you do it occasionally. I'm talking about sustained, satisfied. And you're not sustaining your satisfaction. You'll have a peak and then you go back to normal.
It's very rarely when it has happened. Only on one or two, maybe if I was lucky, 3 occasions, I think twice. But all I'm trying to say is that if Carwan experienced the jhanas, he wouldn't have asked that question that he asked.
Well, the answer to that is, where's your jhana? Right now. Where is it?
No, it's not here. It's not here.
All right. So that's the whole point is can you have happy, wholesome thoughts rather than hindering thoughts? Can you be safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied right now? Can you apply that and sustain it? That's the first jhana. The Buddha says that your path to enlightenment is that first jhana, which all the way has to do with can you sustain feeling satisfied that this is good enough? Right now is good enough. Can you make it good enough? Ben, that's what you're telling me, that right now you're good enough. You're satisfied. Why should I go to the what? I'm okay. So that's the whole question is, can you become satisfied? Because if you can become satisfied and you're not chasing and not being chased, and you can sit down, become satisfied, and come to a rest, you'll nibbana, you'll cool off. What a relief. Oh, what a relief it is. And I don't have to be chasing any magical nibbanas. I don't have to be chasing any magical enlightenment. I can stop chasing and sit down. You probably heard me say the example of you're in a room completely black. It's a normal room with normal furniture, and you've got a black cat. You know that black cat is in the room because you saw it when you came in and closed the door. But now the door is closed, the room is completely dark, and you can't hear, or you can maybe hear the cat, but you can't see it. In fact, it's kind of hard to hear the cat. So, how are you going to catch that cat? How can you catch the cat in a completely darkened room and the cat's black? The answer is that is you sit down in the middle of the floor and the cat will find you. So if you can do that, if you can just sit down and wait and not chase around, that coolness will come to you. Just sit down, no place to go, nothing to do. Wow, everything is okay. Because normally when you sit down, you'll start thinking about, where's that cat? Or maybe where's that cat? And so you're not satisfied. But when you do sit down in that dark room with your eyes closed and say, oh, wow, what a nice cat, it's going to come to you. But you have to stay in that state of safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. Can you stay safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied? And then in the next moment, safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. Can you stay in that state of sukha, safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied? If you can stay safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied, that's the state of sukha, and sukha is exactly opposite of dukkha. And so you have fulfilled the teaching of the Buddha in that first jhana by being safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied, because you can sustain that.
At Dhammarato, I know, like you suggest 6 times a day for 10 minutes, but
That's just to get started.
yeah,
That's
but
just to get started, to get into a practice.
For
Then
me,
you
anytime
start filling that gap, so that 55 minutes when you're not practicing, you start to practice. And pretty soon, every
for
breath.
me to get satisfied, Dhammarato, it took a couple of it took a good while. It took a lot of practice for me to get satisfied anytime I did.
Well, keep practicing, keep being satisfied. That's what we need to practice, is being satisfied. And I'm talking about a deep level of satisfaction of, wow, this is so nice. Oh, this is good enough, really good enough.
And sometimes before the satisfaction comes, joy, and I know joy is satisfying, but sometimes before the satisfaction comes, you can get a little hit of joy as well, which is really nice.
Satisfaction is joyful. Joy and satisfaction are very close together. They're like they're both on the same side of the coin. Because most coins have two sides. We're not having a two-sided coin. We've only got a one-sided coin, and on that one-sided coin, it's got a photo or a picture of an item and a background. So the item itself then is the satisfaction, and the background is the joy. It's all in one place.
Thanks, Dhammarato. Thank you. Thanks for the call anyway. Thank you.
Okay, Mikey, why don't you take this thing home?
Thank you, friends, for being here today. As you may have heard, Skype is closing down soon. Just to keep up to date with where we're going to be moving and how that process is going to be happening, you can check the video description of the latest videos on the Dhammarato YouTube channel. I'll also be posting notices in the Skype group, as well as on the Dhamma Friends Discord. And if for whatever reason you do lose contact with us, you can also contact us through Open Sangha Foundation. So there are several ways to keep in touch, and we'd like to keep in touch with all of you. You're muted right now, Dhammarato.
Yes, you can always send each other noble messages on the website. The website's going to stay up. So you can email, you can message, etc., like that. The messages, by the way, are set up so that when the message comes in, if you're If the recipient of the message is not online, our website will send them an email so that you know that you've got messages. So that would be the last resort. We also have the Dhamma friends on Discord. We're going to get another system going somewhere, sometime, and right now, MS Team looks like the way to go. All right, well, thank you all. It's been a good talk. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ta-da!
Bye bye.